joined for a little bit by State Representative Thomas Carmody. Hey, Mr. Thomas, welcome back to KEEL. How are you today?
Good morning, Robert. Good morning, Erin.
Morning.
Mr. Thomas, a yay vote from Representative Thomas Carmody on the third of a penny tax 5-year temporary. Tell us about that. What made you think this was a good idea?
Well, I mean, the state's got to have some more revenue. There's no doubt about it. The problem that we've had that's this full year, much less the full term, is trying to find a consensus of a supermajority of both chambers. And what occurred last night in Senate Revenue and Fisc certainly puts us in a more precarious situation, but we'll have to see what happens on the Senate floor when they go to debate it. They basically took what the House had forwarded to them as a third of a penny and doubled that amount.
In your mind, I know in the minds of a lot of less yes votes similar to yourself on the House side on the third of a penny, is anything other than that, is making it permanent, is an increase from a third of a penny, are those deal breakers as they come back from the Senate side? Is it a deal breaker for you?
At this point, I think that we're all open to try to look at what the opportunities are here. But again, there's no reason to even consider a proposition that's not going to garner a supermajority of the votes. And I can tell you right now that the appetite for the House is not to make anything permanent at this point.
The deadline's Monday, Thomas. How frustrated?
12 midnight, Erin.
Yeah.
12 midnight.
How frustrated are you that we seem to do this? It's over and over again.
The frustration is that you would think with as much time as we've spent in the Capitol that there would at least be some sort of a consensus of a sweet spot. And yet there's not, and we're down to the last, really, 11th hour of a second special session. And granted, I'm certainly optimistic that cooler heads can prevail, but when the ideas of the two chambers are so far apart, it just leaves everybody thinking we're coming back for a third special session.
Thomas, I don't mean this as a gotcha question. You said cooler heads prevail. In your mind, are the representatives that voted no on this, the Seabaws, the Hortons, etc., are they not cooler heads? How do you view the no votes against that third of a penny sales tax?
I respect everybody having the right to vote, what they believe is in the best interest of the state of Louisiana. There's certainly always been a faction of elected representatives, regardless of what level of government, that feels like the government is just too big. And you would have to look at least the expenditures of the state of Louisiana over, I would say, the last at least decade, and say that it's an unsustainable financial model. We're outpacing every other industry. I mean, and the government just can't keep growing and growing and growing, and yet that's what Louisiana has done.
And yet you voted yes to take more money from the people. Explain that to me is sort of a disconnect, huh?
Well, the disconnect being that you could look at the loop that we are in. TOPS, certainly a popular program across the state. Most people that pay taxes that have a child feel like that at least this is one benefit that the state of Louisiana has offered them and guaranteed in their mind that their child would be offered a post-secondary education if they can make the bar.
Do you anticipate more dire warnings from the governor, Jay Darden, etc.? And was your yes vote in any way based on the governor's previous dire warnings?
No, other than we've heard dire warnings forever and a day. And there's certainly every dollar has a constituency here in the state. And so I meet persons who represent those constituents every day here in the Capitol, advocating for why they need the monies that they need. But you've got to fund the operations of the state. You've got to fund higher education. You've got to fund, unfortunately, we have a very large population that does not basically have health care other than by the expansion of the governor's pen. That comes along with a cost that the state has to come up with. And granted, you can make all the claims you want to make about the fact that, this is federal money coming down, but that money comes with requirements that the state pitch in its portion, and it is substantial.
Thomas, I'm talking to State Representative Thomas Carmody. I feel like you'll be candid with me. So I'm going to try to peel back the layers of the artichoke for a moment. Is this more about, in some conservatives' mind, making sure the governor loses? I've heard a lot of that talk, that we're going to make sure he loses.
No, I've heard that specifically by one member of the legislature saying that that's an agenda. I have never heard a person say, this is the game plan. Let's guarantee that this Democratic governor does not have a chance to have any successes on his push card when he runs for election. No, never heard that. But it is a different dynamic, and a very unique one in Louisiana's history, where you would have a minority party on the fourth floor, and the majority party of the legislature basically operating everything else. It's just the difference in political philosophies. John Bell's refrain has been, we need more revenue, we need more revenue, we need more revenue. And I think persons like myself look at it and say, okay, well, wait a minute. We don't have that revenue. And by the Constitution, we're required that the constraints, all we can do is utilize the money that the REC has recognized us to utilize. And the comments about the pretend budget that we had passed and that therefore the governor vetoed, I found very disingenuous, and told my friend that a pretend budget would be that we came out with money that's not there to appropriate.
Should the governor have not vetoed the budget that came from the Senate a couple of weeks ago?
It's, again, his prerogative. I disagreed with it. And
did you disagree with it strongly? Do you think we'd be in the precarious situation that you have described in our conversation this morning repeatedly? Do you think we'd be in the mess we were in right now if the governor had signed the budget?
If he had signed the budget?
If he had signed the budget, do you think the state would be better off? Do you think you, the legislature, the people of Louisiana, would be in a better position today if he had signed the budget that he vetoed?
I think politically it would have been easier for those of us that were trying to support the revenue that needed to be raised for the difference from what we passed in House Bill 1 to what we would need versus what happened last night and then now is going to take place today, where it turns everything on its head. And it's as if we're starting over from scratch with, 4 days left, 5 days left at this point?
How does Thomas Carmody vote on that Senate version? Are you a no vote on that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because of the permanence of the tax?
I think that what they did, and look, this is not my first rodeo. I've seen the way that the ball bounces across the net and gets played and comes back toward us. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, that I'm never surprised at what the Senate comes back with is what they refer to as revenue enhancements.
That's taxes, right? That's what I call them.
That is how you enhance revenue.
Yeah, when you take $1 out of my wallet, it didn't enhance my revenue none.
That's because you're.
But I think it again, for a person like myself who represents a community, a home, and the people that live there, who were so dependent upon not only the hospital at Linwood and Kings Highway, but the physicians that are trying to heal there and trying to teach other healers, that's a major concern. Then you put into play the university on Uri Drive. You put in the university up in the Martin Luther King area. We've got so many needs, and yet there's not enough resources to take care of everything to all the wants that are being brought forward.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right, but so now it comes down to this. We've been here since February. Yeah. It is hard to believe that there could not have been a meeting of the minds between all of this group to come to a consensus to say, look, this is what we are agreeable to do as a group, and let's all get on board. You never have that, okay, let's shake hands and this is what we're going to do. It all seems to boil down to the 11th hour, and then everybody's on pins and needles, and then the next thing you know, issue another special session call.
Running out of time even for that, right?
Even for that, you remember the 30th of June.
You bet.
It is a new fiscal year.